Rwanda grew at 11.2% last year, even as the world entered a recession. And we did that while wages in key sectors grew each year over the last 8 years. We call this economic growth through investments in social equity. Our coffee is now held as among the world's best, and it graces the shelves of Starbucks and Costco. Our tourism experience, which we view as an export that is locally consumed, attracts the world's most demanding travelers who pay a very high price to enjoy our scenery, our animals, and our hospitality. We now export finished goods, high-end woven products, jewelry, and bags, directed to the most famous retail establishments in the United States of America. Put bluntly, our experience demonstrates that a landlocked nation rising out of the crisis through the use of informed strategy and timely action can grow. And that through growth, we can eradicate poverty and create a society that shares power, is more tolerant of differences, and more trusting, action-oriented, and self-determined. Business people who are willing to join us in this endeavor and build upon this model are most welcome to invest and very likely to prosper. No less than Joseph Stiglitz, a Nobel laureate and former chief economist of the World Bank, recently said, developing nations are increasingly convinced that Western economic ideals are ideas to run away from rather than embrace. This is certainly not the case in Rwanda. But it does mean that the multilaterals, who are widely seen as the proxies of a very few nations, should be concerned by this trend. It is time to delink shareholder rights in the multilaterals with the decision rights over the poor. It is time that multilaterals base a greater percentage of their professionals in the countries they assist. It is time that they speed up their decision-making processes. And it is time they show greater willingness to be guided by their client nations, thereby creating incentives for those in the developing nations to improve analytical competence and rest the locus of responsibility for their destinies where it belongs, on their own shoulders. The leaders in the academy have much to offer and reflect upon as well. I have relied on many of the world's greatest economists and the political scientists, and in fact, the leaders of many other disciplines. They have often provided the profound intellectual resources required to build a modern nation. I value their commitment to ideals and their goals of rigor and truth. Still, there are some who appear confused by our improvements. When our recent elections placed a world-leading 56% of women into our parliament, making it perhaps one of the world's most progressive deliberative bodies, a small number were perplexed. You should not imagine that the same women who sit together on Rwanda's urban hillsides, weaving the peace baskets, have a potential to sit in parliament and create legislation as intricate and profound. It is as if some can never agree that something good can come out of Africa, that we might indeed lead the world in something good. Let me invite each of you who loves Africa deeply, who has dedicated themselves to the truth long ago, to reconsider these biases and to be a force for positive change. You will certainly find in many leaders of Africa that we are willing to learn from you. Here are some of my thoughts that I believe could be the basis for a more productive protocol between rich and poor nations. We will focus on the honor investment that, with the possibility of infinite returns, our children. We will do this through investments in education and the most disenfranchised of our society to global networks of productivity. This, we believe, provides us the greatest chance to raise incomes and lay the basis for a host of progressive human values like tolerance, trust, civic engagement, and other innovative attitudes, thus strengthening our society. We ask you to never pretend that you care more about the people of our nations more than we do. People tend to forget that prosperity and justice are a process, and they fail to acknowledge that they took a long time to achieve what they have achieved so far. We are open to learn from the best processes, but it can take some time. No, when prominent journalists and other experts foster the debate between market fundamentalism and authoritarian regimes, they are perhaps incorrect. The real debate is between those who persist, who prefer facile, moralistic solutions, and who dare not challenge the exhausted logic of the past, versus those who would seek to place the civil rights and the moral burdens of destiny on those who shall lead it. This requires a new protocol between rich and poor. And this is the conversation for the time in which we live. I thank you for your kind attention.